Hello, everybody. Just watched Trump's speech in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I'd just like to say, great speech. I advise you all check it out. However, in our debate, Waldo could not make a video. I'm not sure why he couldn't. For whatever reason, he had to type his response. And just because I don't want to confuse the audience having to go read something, then watch my videos. And I don't want him to, not feel like he's getting a fair shot at this debate. I actually decided that I am going to read his written response out to you guys in a video. Here it is. This is word for word Waldo's response to me. Exodus debate opening statement. This opening statement is divided into 4 parts. A summary of biblical account. What are the reasons to doubt the Exodus account? What truth is in the Exodus account? What do I believe really happened? A summary of the biblical account. If we want to debate the Exodus account as it is described in the Bible, we first need to know what the Bible says. Therefore, I am beginning my opening statement with a summary of the Exodus account. The Exodus starts with Joseph entering Egypt as a slave, and through his talent for dream interpretation, he raises to power. After that, he invites his family to live in Egypt. From there, they live and multiply for hundreds of years. Eventually, a pharaoh that did not know Joseph took the throne, and he enslaved the Israelites, making them build cities for him. Eventually, the Israelites became so numerous that the pharaoh became concerned and decided to kill some Israelite babies to control their numbers. It was then that Moses was born. Moses was eventually chosen by God to free his people. To accomplish this, God sent plagues that would convince the pharaoh to let the people go free. After being in Egypt for about 400 years, 600,000 Israelite men, or about 3 million people in total, leave Egypt. They cross the Red Sea after Moses parted the water, and the returning water washed away the Egyptians that had decided to pursue them. After this escape, they go to Canaan. However, they are scared of the inhabitants of the land and were forced to roam the desert for 30 years. It is only then that they reach the promised land and Moses dies. What are the reasons to doubt the Exodus account? First off, there is a problem with dating the Exodus. Possible dates range from 1500 BCE to 1200 BCE. This wide range of possible dates makes it difficult to evaluate all the evidence. Now, don't get me wrong, this does not disprove the Exodus, but it does complicate things. The biggest problem with the Exodus is the lack of evidence. There is no evidence for 1 or about 3 million Jews in Egypt around this time. There is no papyri, hieroglyphics, tomb paintings, or anything. The Egyptians were excellent record keepers, and they never recorded anything about millions of Jews living in the land for hundreds of years. There isn't even evidence the Israelites were used to build monuments and cities. Egyptians built those, and many Egyptians had to provide labor as a form of yearly taxation when they were not working on their farms, etc. Now, I am not saying the Egyptians had no slaves. They did. They just never had millions of Jewish slaves. We know what early Israelite houses looked like, and we find a very Jewish characteristic at these sites. There are no pig bones anywhere to be found because Jews didn't eat pork. The only problem is that these houses are found in Canaan and not in Egypt. If plenty of Jews lived in Egypt for hundreds of years, we would have expected to have found plenty of sites like these, but we don't find them anywhere. So what is the earliest evidence for a large population of Jews in Egypt? Well, this evidence comes from the Elephantine papyri. These date from around 400 BC. These Jews lived on the Elephantine Islands as merchants and traders, but they were not slaves. Instead, they were allies of the Pharaoh, and some of them even owned Egyptian slaves. Now, if there were Jews in Egypt during the time of the Exodus, that should have been evidence of that. There should have been evidence of that. Similar to the findings on the Elephantine Island. Another reason we know millions of people did not leave Egypt is that such a labor drain would have crashed the economy of Egypt's power. Crashed the economy and Egypt's power would have disappeared. But that is not what we see. Egypt's power remains pretty much unchanged before, during, and after the Exodus. During the Exodus, Egypt was basically at the height of her power. She would never have allowed most of her labor force to leave the country. Egypt would most certainly never have allowed this law's force to go and stir up trouble in Canaan. Canaan was very important to Egypt, as most invading armies came through Canaan. Thus, Egypt would have controlled Canaan. I'm guessing there's some type of a typo here. Thus, Egypt would control Canaan had soldiers stationed there to stop invasions. There is also no evidence of that many people wandering around the desert for 40 years. If that amount of people did live there for that long, you would expect to have found plenty of latrines, kitchens, fire pits, and garbage dumps all over the place. However, we have not found anything. We have found ancient Bedouin campsites in the desert, and we have never found anything to suggest millions of people lived there for 40 years. I don't know if he means to say 400 years, but it says 40 years. The earliest mention of Israelites comes from the Muffatine stele, which dates from 1207 BCE, where the tribe of Israel is mentioned, but even here there is no reference to them being slaves. What truth is there in the Exodus account? Some parts of the Exodus narrative could have been based on real events. For example, the plagues, at least some of them, are based on natural phenomena. Plagues of frogs, locusts, and gnats, etc. have been observed before, so it is not a big stretch to conclude the biblical account was inspired by them, and the biblical writers merely exaggerate the scale of the plague. However, I don't think the 10th plague happened. What I believe really happened, I believe that the more likely origins of the Israelites lie among the Canaanites. The Canaanites were a loose collection of diverse people. Judaism first emerged within one of these distinct groups living in Canaan. These first Jews, or pro-Israelites, might have been joined by a small group of runaway slaves from Egypt, thus serving as inspiration for the story. These proto-Israelites grew in power and number, and when Egypt eventually lost control of Canaan, the Israelites took over. Eventually, the Israelites were conquered and taken to Babylon. It was there that in actual bondage, the story of escaping bondage would have been most appealing, and it was here that the Exodus narrative was first written down. Alright, so that's it. That's his written response. It will be included in the description below just in case you don't feel like watching and for some reason do want to read it. But either way, that is Waldo's opening statement. I will be making my reply very soon.